What if you turned on the news and got as many ideas as you do reasons for exasperation? What if you saw people collaborating and cooperating and shifting power in all sorts of ways we're usually told are impossible? Well, that's what the Laura Flanders Show is all about. We set out to bring you reporting not on somebody's pipe dream of how things could be, but on real work that is happening right now and shifting power across this country and the world. We don't receive money from corporations or governments. We're backed by you, our listeners and supporters. So pony up some support today at lauraflanders.org. Hi, I'm Laura Flanders, and this is the Laura Flanders Show, the TV and radio program that seeks to raise radical spirits by interviewing forward-thinking people with real-life models of shifting power from the few to the many in the worlds of arts, entrepreneurship, and governance. It's new media's sky is falling moment. Instead of the promised golden age, we're seeing rolling cutbacks and massive layoffs at digital darlings like Vice and Buzzfeed. Is that it for workers' rights? Are unions any match for advertising pressure from Google and Facebook? We'll talk to organizers this week on the Laura Flanders Show, the place where the people who say it can't be done take a back seat to the people who are doing it. Welcome. 2018 was the worst year in media in a decade. Thousands of workers lost their jobs at old-fashioned newspapers and newfangled digital media firms alike. Layoffs nearly tripled over the year before, and this year is not looking good either. Job cuts announced in January alone were up nearly 50%. Buzzfeed, once a digital darling, recently laid off 15% of its workforce, sending shockwaves through the newsroom. Its editorial staff then announced that a union was forming. To quote them, "We want to remain spry and competitive," the union said in a statement, "but we reject the argument that we must choose between freelancing in a hellscape gig economy for vampirical platforms or submitting to the whims of a corporation." Here to discuss the situation at BuzzFeed in particular and the industry at large are Albert Samaha, an investigative reporter and union stalwart at BuzzFeed News, Nastaran Mohit, organizing director of the News Guild of New York, which is the biggest local and the largest union for news professionals. That's the National News Guild, and labor reporter and union organizer Kim Kelly. Welcome all. Well, if you can't all sort this out, I don't know who can. Let's start with what brought you to journalism. I always think we're very critical of journalism, and we sometimes forget why people go into it in the first place. Kim.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, writing is the one thing I've always been good at, and I grew up in a very poor, rural, under-resourced area, and learning to read very early and getting into writing is kind of what got me out.
Which poor, rural, under-resourced area?
How much you know about Jersey? No, I mean,
no, okay.
I'm from the Pine Barrens, which is essentially like a million-acre nature preserve in the middle of south central New Jersey, and I'm from Chatsworth, which is an unincorporated community in the middle of it. Not a lot of kids who grow up the way I do get out and get to tell other people's stories and get to tell their own stories. So that's something that's really important to me. And I spent 16 years writing about heavy metal, and because that's my other love. But in the past, I guess, 3 to 4 years, as I've become very involved in, Vice's organization efforts and then the greater labor movement, I've kind of pivoted a little bit towards covering those issues as well.
Albert, what did you imagine life in journalism was going to be like, and when do you remember it first appealing to you?
Really, since as far back as I can remember almost. I grew up, reading the sports section in Sports Illustrated growing up, and as I got older, I started to read more social justice sorts of journalism, and I think, I was very curious about the world, and I saw the world as a deeply unfair place. I love to write, and I love to tell stories, and I saw that the stories that were kind of going on around me where I was growing up weren't really being told out as much as I thought they should be. From the time of high school and on, I'd just been focused on how can I kind of tell these valuable stories that in any way might try to reveal why the world is unfair and how to change it.
And Nastaran, how do you intersect with this story? Was journalism something in your life, or was it union organizing?
It was always union organizing. I started to organize about 15, 16 years ago, really just starting out in the service sector, working as a waitress and a bartender, and starting to organize some of my colleagues. And Over the years, I had the opportunity to organize in different industries, organizing with teachers and nurses, domestic workers. And I started to work with the News Guild about 5 years ago and have been doing that full-time ever since.
Well, 5 years ago was a brilliant time to come into journalism. I mean, what an incredible decade it has been, both on the good and the bad. Extraordinary explosion of possibility on the digital side, tremendous tremors of crisis just about everywhere else. I think what we want to talk about in this conversation is how these tremors have now hit digital, which was supposed to be this sort of dreamscape and where all the resources had gone to when they left the legacy press. So who wants to talk about where we are right now? Kim, do you want to sort of kick things off?
A little bit difficult to discuss without lapsing into profanity. But we're in a place, it feels like, you know the story of the Pied Piper?
Yeah.
It feels like the Pied Piper has come back to collect his due.
Meaning all those rats?
There's a lot of rats. I'll give you that much. Like you said, like digital media was where the money was as well. The hot, sexy new era of journalism. And now the money, it belongs to Google and Facebook because they control all of the advertising revenue, and that essentially dictates what digital publishers are able to do. The pivot to video, that was such a great, wonderful, innovative thing that hit about, a year and a half ago, has been a massive, it's decimated so many publications and so many sectors of the industry because we found out that wasn't true. We're being swindled, and thousands of people lost their jobs because a couple of rich tech people decided to lie to some other rich people, and all of us at the bottom were let go.
Wait, unpack that a little bit more. What do you mean that we were lied to and swindled?
The Facebook algorithm, I'm not a social media expert, but I have enough friends who are that told me a little bit about the process. We were sold this new Facebook algorithm was going to make it, well, what they were doing is they wanted to make it so that users of Facebook could see, like, their grandchildren or, like, argue with their racist uncle about Trump, like, see fun stuff like that.
Yeah, this was supposedly their response, their responsible response to the crisis of election year.
Right, and then they wanted to show us those sort of more personal things. So digital publishers, they weren't able to get as much traffic because they was just sort of pushed down. And that's why so many publishers started to rely on video, because Facebook told them video is the next thing. Remember Facebook Live? People hired Facebook Live like workers. Like, it was a whole thing. It was supposed to revolutionize the industry. It was just an absolute sandcastle. Like, it all just disappeared once the tide came back in. And now all of those people that were hired to do video and all of the people that were laid off that were in the more editorial side, like, they're all screwed. And Mark Zuckerberg is still having a great time.
The head of Facebook. I'm coming to you, Albert. I mean, Buzzfeed was not short of cash. It had raised, $500 million? $400 million of it from Comcast? Where did all that money go, and why is it now laying people off?
I think kind of one of the challenges we face now is that when I first got to BuzzFeed about 4+ years ago, kind of the business model that we were so optimistic by, this idea that even though news itself might not be able to crack the code of how to be profitable, we had this entire operation around us that had cracked that code. Because of that, obviously, there was all this venture capitalist money that led to probably my hiring and a lot of people who came after me. That money was based off of projections that I think, in hindsight, maybe were not realistic. And what changed was, I think, when that money was coming in and when that growth was happening, I can't speak for the people making the decisions, but it seems like they may have underestimated the degree to which really the tech companies have the control in the situation. And that even though many of these situations in digital media are new, the problems are age-old, right? It's still a matter of advertising funds that aren't there.
But, I mean, Nastaron, coming to you, I mean, venture capital, they're on an adventure. They knew this wasn't a sure thing. How come it's people like Albert, not Albert, but people like him who are getting let go?
Yeah. Well, I think the explosion and the expansion in digital media mimics the expansion and explosion in many other industries, where you have venture capitalists coming into an industry where they see or think that they can turn a significant profit. And as Kim already laid out, and Albert did as well, these were really outsized projections. And what we're seeing now is this bubble bursting. And this bubble has been bursting for some time. We're just seeing the most difficult period now, where we're seeing layoff after layoff after layoff, where hundreds of jobs are being hemorrhaged. And I think that fundamentally we have investors in media who do not care at all about journalism.
Right.
They have absolutely no interest in local reporting, in the craft of journalism. They don't want these stories to be told because the same private equity partners that are coming in and pillaging these news organizations are also pillaging our communities. They're pillaging our hospitals and our schools. And so these are, if you look at Alden Capital, which was one of the big hedge funds that is now going after Gannett. Gannett is one of the biggest publishers in the country. These are, Heath Freeman, anyone can do a rudimentary Google search of this guy and you see what kind of characters we're looking at. And we actually had a group of journalists last year fly into New York City from the Denver Post to go straight to the Alden headquarters to protest.
Because it had happened to them at the Post.
Because it had happened, it completely decimated the newsroom of the Denver Post.
We're talking about asset stripping.
Absolutely. I mean, stripping to the bone. And so I think in many ways this is... I don't want to use the term unprecedented because I think we do have to view this within a historical context that media has gone through many different phases and periods of growth and contraction. Certainly when print started to lose all of those advertising dollars, we lost thousands of jobs in the 90s. So many of these publications were really stripped to the bone.
What's interesting to me, though, is... We'll come to unionization in a second, but when we talk about assets, we are still seeing people like Alden, the capital like Alden, and others, sort of like the Sinclair Group on the television side, buying up these old legacy papers, buying up these local newspapers that have been around for decades. There's still some assets there, which is interesting to me. Assets enough that they're curious about. And when you look at the statistics on subscriptions, and we'll come back to digital in a second, those old papers, the ones where we said there was no value left, have stayed fairly consistent, even though advertising's quadrupled, news reporting's shrunk. There's something about local papers people still like.
Absolutely. I mean, the public still wants to read the news, whether it's print or digital. We know that print revenue has gone down and print circulation has gone down. But at the end of the day, there is value and there are assets to mine within these newsrooms. And so it's not just about turning this enormous profit. It's also about it's not just the players that are investing in these media companies and these smaller news and gobbling up these smaller newspapers. They're also going in and looking at the staff. Sometimes it is a unionized staff. They're going in and they're seeing how they can do more with less. So why do you need to have fact checkers and copy editors and, an entire photo department when you can just aggregate the photos and pull them from stock photos and have your reporters do the copy editing and the fact checking. So saying to workers, this used to be your role, but now because we've let go 25, 30, 40, 50% of the workforce, you're going to have to do this, and this for the same salary. It's how you lower the labor costs and you start to turn a profit.
This is the Laura Flanders Show. I'm Laura. My guests are Nastaran Mohit, organizing director at the News Guild of New York, freelance journalist and former staff writer for Vice Kim Kelly, who serves as council member for the Writers Guild of America East, and Albert Samaha, investigative reporter for Buzzfeed News. While media investors are feeling the squeeze of tech companies like Google and Facebook who monopolize advertising revenues, they're prioritizing profits by squeezing their newsroom staff with massive layoffs and cutbacks, even at digital darlings like BuzzFeed and Vice. After the break, we'll hear how my guests are organizing and how models like cooperatives and subscription-based news services just may be the answer to preserving the Fourth Estate online. On that note, our lovely subscribers are what fuel this show, so do your part and become a sustaining member for as little as $2, $5, or $50 a month. You'll be helping to keep this show free for the listening, and as a thank you, we'll send you a new minicast, Music in the Middle, where we turn a spotlight on the music featured in the show. That's just one of the perks you'll get when you contribute at patreon.com/The LF Show. That's Patreon, patreon.com/The LF Show. Here's The Awakening by For Hero, featuring Ursula Rucker from the album Play with the Changes, released on Raw Canvas Records.
Sister girl, wanna tell you about this thing that's been weighing heavy on my heart. Haunts both my dreams and my first breath. Where to start? Well, revolution it seems has become an antique. When in my youth, revolution was what we rose with the sun to seek. We were fierce now. Our glory days are nothing but a page in an edge-worn book. An afro, a raised fist. A black beret, black pride, set aside, reduced to mere history. It saddens me. It saddens me. But will these words fall on deaf ears? Cause my tears won't fill up the riverbed of resistance and change. It's gone dry, and gone and unknown are the names which gave that river its tranquility, its beautiful force and Godspeed. Rise up out of the complacency and do sleep. We need an awakening. Bring the noise, daughter. Now is the time for you and your generation to put this universal chaos in order. Me and mine, we've held high the picket signs, met behind closed doors, spoke out against war, spoke up for art and equality, told people we a community, a family. The years travel quick like speed and light, and the torchlight is burning low. And my tears, you know, they won't fill the riverbed of resistance and change. They're just an offering for those who have been named with love, and those who have died nameless, that they rest, knowing that their lives were worth the fight, that this planet and life are gifts to all, not just a chosen few. The now and future are up to you, so what are you and your brothers and sisters gonna do?
What are some of the choices being made at BuzzFeed, and what role is the union playing, Albert?
Once kind of BuzzFeed News had the number of here's how many people you have to lay off, it became just kind of this triage of, okay, what are the areas that we most want to focus on? And I think part of that is looking at like, what is the value that we can bring to the wider media landscape? And I think part of that is consolidating into, okay, so like if you look at our newsroom now compared to what was before the layoff, now we have tech, politics, and investigations, as well as, you know, some other like a culture desk and some other things around that. And it's just kind of channeling all our resources into what we see as the biggest stories in America, as opposed to competing on, 15% of the news media landscape. Maybe we compete on like 8% and just focus all our resources there. And I think part of that is because we see our value, not just to our readers, but maybe even to like the shareholders and the people that make money off of us, is kind of breaking through this very chaotic news cycle. Mm-hmm. That page views are no longer the currency of the realm, as they seemed to be 4 or 5 years ago. Now the currency of the realm is kind of this prestige of kind of getting your brand's name on the CNN Cryon for 24 hours, breaking through into whatever, like the Axios newsletter in the morning. But this idea of creating impact, changing laws, being in the national conversation, I think is now kind of the value that we see, kind of almost the advertising value that we have.
Vice?
I wish that I could tell you there's a rhyme or reason to what they're doing. The recent layoffs, all the workers were sort of bamboozled. They couldn't quite figure out why so-and-so is laid off or why this is happening. There wasn't a clear plan that was laid out that was presented to us, at least. From what I could tell from reading about it in the press, Vice's new CEO is very interested in the television and digital side of the company. Mm-hmm. Editorial seems like it remains an afterthought, which is unfortunate because that was the bedrock of the company. Vice started in Montreal as a punk magazine, and the people that are still writing those stories and doing really incredible work have been consistently undervalued, which is part of why we were the first unit to organize and unionize back in 2015. I don't know what they're doing, and I'm not entirely sure that they do either. But, I'm sure somebody who makes a lot more money than I do could come on and give you a very well thought out, beautiful business plan. But I'm just a worker, and from my perspective, who knows?
Yeah. We're going to talk about the union drive. And after your successful one in New York, the Canadians were also organizing. I had a chance to talk with some of them back in 2016 in a May Day rally in Washington Square. Here's that clip. What's happening around here is union groups from all across the city are showing up for a May Day rally linking immigrant rights with worker rights. And one of the interesting things that we're finding is that traditional labor is represented as well as the less traditional. I'm standing here with folks from Vice. You've heard of that online media outlet that also has a television and cable channel these days. Well, they're in a union fight. They've got some good news from north of a border, some more challenging news here. And here to talk about it is...
Happy?
Tell us a little bit about how you're situated. What's your relationship to this Vice union struggle?
So as a bargaining unit member who helped bargain since November of 2015, we just today unionized, and our president of the company has sort of sent an email to everybody ratifying our union, or sort of letting everybody know that the ratification process is complete and we are a union now.
That's exciting. How long has it taken to get to this point?
A long time, full of blood, sweat, and tears.
Blood, sweat, and tears. So tell us about that part of the picture.
watching the last few years and this kind of explosion in organizing, it's just been incredibly inspiring, not just to see all of these workplaces organize, but to see how they've all connected in such a way that they're sharing resources, they're sharing experiences, they're able to tell their stories through this very effective medium, which is Twitter and other social media platforms. And so I think in that regard, media workers have the benefit of being able to share what's happening internally in their workplaces very publicly. And so that's been beneficial in holding employers accountable, in putting serious spotlight on potential union busting or any anti-union activity in the workplace that other workers in other industries don't necessarily have the benefit of. So I think that's been really exciting to see that kind of open up a whole space where you have media workers across the landscape connecting with one another and being inspired by their struggles. So in Canada, they were inspired by the Vice US union, and actually when we went public with our campaign at Buzzfeed News in the US, our sister local up in Canada that represents those Vice workers, they went public on the same day with their organizing drive. And we got news that Buzzfeed Germany also announced their intent to form a staff council.
Your union, I think, was not just a product of the post-layoff scenario. This has been in the works for a while, isn't that right?
Correct. For some folks that have been involved in the effort years, for most folks involved in the effort, several months at least.
And you actually were able to play a role in the terms on which people were let go.
Yes, that didn't magically appear out of thin air from Thursday to the Monday where it existed, right? There had already been this sort of solidarity amongst folks in the newsroom and this kind of sense that we were kind of on this track. And I think part of it was like when a lot of us first got to BuzzFeed, it was kind of this new business model, and I think we all kind of wanted to give the company the benefit of the doubt and see kind of where this goes and how they're going to kind of change media, give them a chance, right? And when the checks are blank, it's very easy to kind of go along with it. And I think once we had seen that kind of our company, which was supposed to be on the vanguard of figuring out the business model, was beginning to struggle, we weren't immune to the problems hitting the rest of the industry. I think it became clear to many of us that we needed to secure our protections in this kind of turbulent times and also get a seat at the table and have a say in some of the decisions that are affecting us.
And has union changed your life, Kim?
Oh my God. It really changed everything. Man, I've been part of the whole thing. Like, there's a reason that they would call me Union Mom. In the beginning, there are multiple reasons that we organized. Of course, the biggest driving factor back in 2015 was money. Like, it was an open secret that wasn't really much of a secret that at that point, Vice's compensation packages were far below industry standard. And people were suffering. Like, people couldn't afford to live. And the office is in Williamsburg. That's not exactly a place where you can get a sandwich for $5. Like, people have to live in New York. It was people were having a very hard time. That was a big motivator. And now we're on our second contract for editorial. Something that I'm very proud of that we managed to get in our latest contract for editorial was the institution of salary floors for every job title. And we weighted that in favor of lower or more junior titles because those are the titles that people who are women or queer, people of color, who are immigrants, the people that get screwed over the most, that's the person that's going to get the starting salary, right? So we wanted to make sure that at the very least that starting salary was going to be something reasonable. I mean, I was very low, poorly paid basically throughout my entire tenure. I would have gotten a really big raise if I hadn't gotten laid off a couple weeks ago, which is fine, But
wait, I'm sure it's not fine. I mean, we do talk kind of blithely about layoffs, and there are real personal costs. Tell me about your friends.
Some people really were devastated. I have a friend who she's not American. She's here on a visa. Now she's worried about whether she's going to have to leave. I have a friend who recently moved into a new apartment, finally, after getting a $10,000 raise, and now he doesn't know if he's going to be able to afford that. Like, there are people. I have a friend who, man, this one was the one that made me the angriest. This one person who was the only person from his specific unit who was laid off, who has done incredible work. He was one of the very few black voices at Vice. And he was someone who was formerly homeless, who is now making this incredible work, and now he's thrown back into precarity. Like, these are the kind of things that our corporate overlords don't think about when they're looking at numbers and looking at job titles. Like, these are people. Like, I might be okay because, like, I was going to quit in March anyway. But most people are not. When people have a job that they pour all their life into because they're working in a creative field, they're making work that they care about, they expect to be treated properly and taken care of. Like, no one thinks that they're going to get the 30-year company job anymore. Like, that's not the job market we're in. That's not the economy we're in. Like, capitalism is winning. But at the very least, if you're going to pour your heart and soul into your work, you should at least be treated like a person and not a number.
What are you moving on to yourself?
I'm freelancing. I'm working on a book proposal. I've got a couple really interesting things in the works. I'm doing okay. I had my first piece in the Washington Post the other week. I'm doing a big profile on Sarah Nelson for the New Republic.
The flight attendant union
the
organizer,
president,
who's been on this program.
Yeah, she's incredible.
Who called for a general strike recently.
Yeah, she's my favorite. We're going to get a drink. I can't wait. But I've been hustling for a long time.
You think you'll stay in journalism?
Yeah. I mean, what else am I going to do? This is what I do.
Yeah.
That's who I am.
So back to you, Ness. Mm-hmm. Is there a future in which you could see that we calibrate value, investment, return differently, and keep our news industry vibrant, growing, a healthy ecosystem? People don't need the kind of venture returns of 33% or whatever it was they were expecting, but they could get 13 or 10 or 12.
Well, I think the only way that's going to happen is by journalists and other media workers continuing to organize, and there being a degree of public accountability that is so significant that this constantly is at the forefront of our conversations about. Media is supposed to be, right, a public good, where, the fact that we have local news completely decimated across the country, that's something that matters to every single structure and process that we depend on. So I think that especially with these last few years of local reporting, local news organizations getting hit so hard, that what happened at the Daily News here in New York, I think the more this is part of the conversation.
There is more investment coming in. The Knight Foundation is just one of many that has
so
recently
we are
announced
seeing
a major $1 million investment in local reporting. Will that make
So we're
a difference?
seeing positive developments.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to rely on billionaire benefactors like those that rescued the LA Times from Tronc. We want different models, and I think that's part of. I like Kim. I don't pretend to have
all Jeff Bezos now.
I don't.
Washington Post.
I don't pretend to have all of the answers.
Worse than Rupert Murdoch.
Right, exactly. I don't think any of us pretend. I think if anybody were to say that they have all of the answers, I think the business owners, the workers, we are all trying to figure out how we make this a sane industry where workers can thrive and communities can get their news. And so I think that's what we're all trying to do together, is trying to at least bring accountability and attention to these issues.
There are some exciting models out there. One is Republik, a Swiss paper that has raised a record amount of money online. The other one is the Dutch Correspondent that's due to launch this year. That'll be a different, more
I'm not surprised
structure.
they're not located in the U.S.
Interesting new models, though, out there.
I mean, this is something I want to see the entirety of media pivot to, a worker-owned cooperative model, because I think that's the only way we're going to see any true equity, any true freedom, no one's going to take care of us but us. Even the friendliest billionaire is still a billionaire, so he's still an exploitive deleted, Like we can't depend on venture capitalists. We can't depend on cool billionaires. We can't depend on corporations. Like, the only people that are going to continue to push journalism forward are the journalists. And if we're not being supported by these terrible entities, we should just do it ourselves.
All right, 10-second response from you, Albert.
I'm glad to see you guys' optimism. I think we've seen from the subscription models a lot of places have tried, including us, that people are beginning to be willing to pay money for things online, which I think was not the case for a while.
Albert, Nasran, and Kim, thank you so much. Really a great conversation. I look forward to more.
You can find information on all my guests at our website and more episodes on media matters, cooperative models, and more. Go to www.lauraflanders.org. That's also where you can subscribe to our weekly newsletter and to our podcast, where you'll receive audio extras like my recent interview with Clifford Rosenthal on his latest book, Democratizing Finance: Origins of the Community Development Financial Institutions Movement. It's fascinating, I promise. This show is produced by yours truly, Laura Flanders, with Monica Mohapatra, Charlotte Carpenter, Nat Needham, Natasha Gaspar, Jeannie Hopper, Joanna Pinto, and Dominic Marcella. The Laura Flanders Show is made possible from the Novo, Ford, Tomcat, Cloud Mountain, and Fonda Foundations, as well as by listeners like you. So thank you. Stay kind, stay curious. Until the next time, I'm Laura.